morning sky over Colorado Springs turned dark as massive ships blocked out the sun. The Zarathian Empire had arrived, and they brought their entire war fleet. 73 ships, each the size of a small city, descended through Earth's atmosphere with engines that roared like thunder. Citizens stopped on sidewalks and stared upward. Car alarms went off across the city. News helicopters scrambled to get footage. In the command center of the North American Aerospace Defense Compound, Captain Jake Morrison watched the radar screens light up like a Christmas tree. Red dots filled every monitor. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he kept sipping it anyway. Next to him, Lieutenant Amy Brooks munched on a bagel while adjusting communication frequencies. The main screen crackled to life. An alien face appeared, all sharp angles and glowing red eyes. The creature had 4 mandibles that clicked when it spoke. Its voice came through the speakers like grinding metal. "Primitive humans of Earth," the alien declared. "I am Admiral Vexthor of the Zarathian Empire. We have conquered 73 star systems. Your world is now under our dominion. Surrender immediately or face annihilation." Jake leaned back in his chair and hit the reply button.
"Hey, what's up?"
"I'm Jake. Nice ships you got there." Amy nearly choked on her bagel. The other officers in the room froze. Admiral Vexthor's mandibles stopped clicking. The alien leaned closer to its own camera, as if it hadn't heard correctly. "You do not understand," Vexthor said slowly. "This is not a negotiation. This is a conquest. We have weapons that can burn your cities to ash. We have armies that have crushed civilizations far older than yours. You should be afraid." Jake scratched his chin. "Yeah, okay. Look, it's been a long morning already. Traffic was terrible getting in. Had to stop for gas, which was like $5 a gallon. Then my coffee maker broke, so I'm running on break room sludge here." He held up his mug. "You guys drink coffee? We should talk about this over coffee." The alien's eyes seemed to glow brighter, which Jake guessed meant confusion or anger. Maybe both. Vexthor gestured to someone off-screen. The view changed to show massive weapons firing into an empty asteroid field. Rocks the size of mountains exploded into dust. Cities from other worlds appeared next, burning and broken. "These are the fates of worlds that defied us," Vexthor announced. "Tremble before the might of the Zarathian Empire." Amy leaned over to Jake's microphone. "That's pretty cool CGI. Did you guys use the same software as Hollywood? Because the lighting is really good." Jake nodded. "Yeah, the explosion effects are solid. We've got some film students who'd probably love to know your secrets." Vexthor's mandibles snapped together hard enough to make an audible crack through the speakers. "This is not entertainment. This is reality. You will submit or you will burn." Right, Jake said. He looked at his watch. "Here's the thing. We've got a meeting with the president in about 2 hours. She's going to want to hear your whole pitch. Why don't you and your people come down for dinner tonight? We can hash this out like adults. You guys eat food, right? Or do you photosynthesize or something?" The Admiral stared at them for a long moment. In the background of the alien ship, other Zarathians moved around looking equally confused. One leaned in and whispered something to Vexthor. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "You invite us to dine while we threaten your extinction?" "Well, yeah," Jake said. "I mean, if we're going to be talking about the future of Earth and all that, might as well do it over a good meal. We're thinking barbecue. Maybe some hot wings. Do you guys have taste buds?" Amy jumped in again. "We've got this place that makes wings so hot they make grown men cry. It's kind of a challenge thing. You up for it?" Admiral Vexthor looked like he wanted to say something, paused, then tried again. Nothing came out. Finally, he just cut the transmission. The screen went dark. The command center stayed silent for about 5 seconds. Then someone in the back started laughing. Soon the whole room joined in. Jake finished his cold coffee and stood up. "Amy, get Commander Lisa Grant on the phone. Tell her we need to set up a diplomatic dinner, something with a lot of hot sauce." "You really think they'll show up?" Amy asked. "Oh, they'll show up," Jake said, looking at the massive ship still hanging in the sky outside. They've probably never had anyone react like that before. They're curious now. That's better than scared. An hour later, Commander Lisa Grant stood in the Pentagon briefing room, explaining the situation to a group of very confused generals. Lisa had been in the military for 20 years. She'd served in 3 different wars and commanded peacekeeping missions on 4 continents. She thought she'd seen everything. Alien invasion hadn't been on her bingo card for the year, but she was rolling with it. "So let me get this straight," General Patterson said. "These aliens show up with enough firepower to glass the planet, and Captain Morrison invited them to dinner?" Barbecue, sir, Lisa confirmed. With hot wings as an appetizer. And they accepted? They haven't said no yet, sir. Patterson rubbed his temples. This is the strangest military situation I've ever been briefed on. What's our actual defensive status? Lisa pulled up a tactical map. We've got satellite defenses online. The railgun platforms are charging. Fighter squadrons are on standby. But sir, if they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. They came here to intimidate us into surrendering. The fact that we're not intimidated is throwing them off their game. Why aren't we intimidated? Another general asked. Lisa shrugged. With respect, sir, most of us have lived through worse Mondays than this. We've had economic crashes, pandemics, natural disasters, and political chaos. A bunch of angry aliens with big ships. That's just Tuesday at this point. The room fell quiet. Then Patterson started laughing. It was a tired, slightly manic laugh, but genuine. You know what? She's right. My kid's college debt is scarier than these aliens. At least we can shoot back at them. By evening, the Zarathian delegation had agreed to the dinner meeting. 5 of their warriors beamed down to a secure military facility in Nevada. They wore ceremonial armor that looked designed to intimidate, with spikes and dark metal and glowing red accents. They carried no visible weapons, but Lisa's security team detected enough bioenhancements to make each alien a walking tank. Jake greeted them at the door wearing his dress uniform and a smile. Glad you could make it. Hope you're hungry. The lead Zarathian warrior, who introduced himself as Commander Krelnax, looked around the room with obvious suspicion. This is a trap. Nah, man, Jake said. Just dinner. Come on, the wings are getting cold. They sat at a long table. Humans on one side, aliens on the other. Plates of food covered every surface. Burgers, ribs, chicken wings in 5 different sauce levels, from mild to emergency room. The Zarathians stared at the spread like it might explode. Amy sat across from one of the younger aliens. Try the atomic wings. They're great. The alien cautiously picked up a wing, examined it, then took a small bite. Its eyes went wide. Then wider. Then it made a sound like a tea kettle and grabbed for water. The other Zarathians watched in alarm as their companion downed 3 glasses. Jake ate a wing from the same plate. Yeah, they're pretty good. You get used to the heat. Commander Krelnax set down his fork. You are either very brave or very foolish. Probably a bit of both, Lisa said from the end of the table. But mostly we're just used to dealing with difficult situations. You want to conquer Earth? Get in line. We've been dealing with threats to our existence since we climbed down from the trees. This is just another item on the list. The aliens exchanged glances. This was not how conquests were supposed to go. But as the dinner continued and the conversation flowed, something strange happened. The Zarathians started to relax, not because they felt welcomed, but because they were genuinely confused. These humans weren't posturing or hiding fear. They really were this calm about the whole thing. As the evening ended and the aliens prepared to beam back to their ships, Vex Thor himself appeared on a portable screen. Commander Krelnax, report. The commander looked at the humans, then back at his admiral. Sir, I have no idea what we've gotten ourselves into. The Zarathians decided that dinner diplomacy wasn't working fast enough. Admiral Vex Thor ordered ground deployments to major cities across Earth. They would show humanity the futility of resistance by occupying their population centers. The sight of Zarathian warriors in the streets would surely break whatever strange courage these humans possessed, Commander. Krelnax led his battalion through the portal generator directly into downtown Los Angeles. The technology allowed them to skip the landing phase entirely. One moment they stood on their ship, the next they materialized on a busy street corner at 8 in the morning. 50 warriors, fully armed and armored, appeared in a flash of blue light right in the middle of rush-hour traffic. The effect was immediate. Car horns started blaring, not in panic but in annoyance. A delivery truck swerved and the driver leaned out his window. Hey, you can't park there. I got a route to run. Krelnax raised his plasma rifle skyward and fired a warning shot. The bolt of energy scorched the air and dissipated harmlessly above the buildings. He expected screaming, running, chaos. Instead, people took out their phones and started filming. Someone yelled, "World Star." A teenager asked if this was for a movie. Humans of Los Angeles, Krelnax announced through his armor's speakers. This city is now under Zarathian control. Return to your homes and await further instructions. A woman in a business suit walked right past him talking on her phone. Yeah, I'm going to be late. There's some kind of protest or flash mob or something blocking 5th Street. Just start the meeting without me. One of Krelnax's warriors stepped in front of her. She looked up at the 7-foot-tall alien, sighed deeply, and walked around him. The warrior stood there confused about what to do next. They'd trained for combat. They'd trained for crowd control. Nobody had trained them for being ignored. A traffic cop on a motorcycle pulled up next to the alien formation. He looked them over, made some notes on a tablet, and started writing a ticket. Krelnax approached him. "What are you doing?" the commander demanded. "You're in a no-parking zone," the cop said without looking up. "Also, that energy weapon discharge was a violation of City Ordinance 742B. That's a $500 fine. And I'm going to need to see some identification and vehicle registration. We are not vehicles. We are conquerors." The cop finally looked up. "You got a permit for that?" "We need no permit. We are the Zarathian Empire." "Right, well, in Los Angeles you need a permit, even if you're from outer space." He finished writing and handed Krelnax a ticket. "You can pay online or contest it in court. Have a nice day." The cop drove off. Krelnax stared at the piece of paper in his hand. His warriors gathered around to look at it. One of them pointed out that the fine increased if they didn't pay within 30 days. Across the city, Sergeant Danny Cole was having an equally frustrating morning. His alarm hadn't gone off, his shower ran cold, and now his regular coffee shop had a line out the door. When he finally got inside, he nearly walked into a Zarathian warrior examining the menu board. The alien turned to face him, energy blade humming to life. "Kneel before the Zarathian Empire." Danny looked at his watch, then at the alien, then at the counter where the barista was trying very hard to look busy. "Look, buddy, I've got to be at the base in 40 minutes. I'm not kneeling, I'm not running, I'm just getting my coffee. You want something? I'll buy you a latte." The warrior's blade hummed louder. "You dare mock me?" "I'm not mocking you. I'm serious. You guys probably don't have coffee where you're from. It's pretty great. Changes your whole morning." Danny stepped around the warrior and approached the counter. "Hey Martinez, can I get the usual?" "And whatever this guy wants." The barista looked relieved to have something normal to do. "Sure thing, Danny. What do aliens drink?" The warrior deactivated his blade and approached the counter cautiously. "What is this coffee?" "It's liquid energy," Danny said. "Bitter, hot, and addictive. You'll love it or hate it. No in between." 5 minutes later, Danny and the Zarathian warrior sat at a small table by the window. The alien had removed his helmet and was cautiously sipping a cappuccino. His expression suggested he couldn't decide if this was the best or worst thing he'd ever tasted. "So, what's your name?" Danny asked. "Corvex, Strike Unit 7. "Nice to meet you, Corvex. I'm Danny. Marine Corps retired 6 months ago. Now I teach hand-to-hand combat at the base." He checked his watch again. "Which I'm going to be late for if this coffee doesn't kick in soon." "You are not afraid of me?" Corvex asked. "Should I be? You haven't tried to kill me yet. And if you do, well, I've survived worse things than aliens. Had a drill sergeant once who could make grown men cry with just a look. You're pretty tame compared to that." Corvex set down his cup. "Your species is very strange." "Yeah, we get that a lot. Even from each other." Danny stood up. "Look, I really do have to run." "You need anything else? Directions, a map, the Wi-Fi password?" The warrior just stared at him as he left. Meanwhile, in New York, things were going equally poorly for the occupation forces. A team of Zarathian scientists had taken over a research laboratory at Columbia University, expecting to demonstrate their superior technology. Instead, they found themselves locked in an argument with Dr. Helen Pierce, who refused to evacuate her lab. "You can't just barge in here," Helen said, blocking the door to her clean room. "I've got experiments running. Do you have any idea how long it takes to culture these cells?" 3 weeks. 3 weeks of careful monitoring. I'm not abandoning them because you want to measure protons or whatever it is you do." The lead scientist, whose translator rendered his name as Dax, tried to explain. "We are not asking. We are commandeering this facility for the Zarathian Empire. And I'm telling you no. This is my lab. I've got a grant from the National Science Foundation. I've got deadlines. I've got a reputation to maintain. You want to conquer the building? Fine. Do it after 5 when I'm done for the day." Her graduate assistant, Kevin Sharp, appeared from the back room carrying a box of equipment. "Dr. Pierce, where do you want these samples?" "Cold storage, bottom shelf," Helen said without taking her eyes off the aliens. Kevin noticed the Zarathians for the first time. "Oh hey, you guys here for the biology conference? It's next week, but I can get you some registration forms." "We are here to conquer your world," Dax said flatly. Cool, cool. Hey, you guys strong? These boxes are pretty heavy. Could use a hand getting them downstairs. One of the warriors trained for combat and intimidation found himself holding a box of lab equipment and following a college student down to the basement. He wasn't sure how it happened. It just did. Back at the Zarathian command ship, Admiral Vexthor reviewed the reports from all the ground teams. Los Angeles occupation status uncertain. Multiple parking tickets issued. New York, laboratory seized but somehow now helping with human research. London warriors stuck in traffic for 3 hours. Tokyo, politely asked to remove shoes before entering buildings. Sydney, locals invited warriors to barbecue on the beach. This makes no sense, Vexthor said to his second-in-command. We have occupied 17 worlds. Always the same pattern. We arrive, we demonstrate force, they surrender. Why do these humans not follow the pattern? Perhaps they are too primitive to understand the danger, his second offered. No, they understand. They simply do not care. The Admiral pulled up footage from a street camera in Berlin. It showed a Zarathian warrior trying to blockade a road. An elderly woman with a grocery cart simply pushed past him. When he tried to stop her, she hit him with her purse. The warrior backed away, more shocked than hurt. In Paris, warriors had set up a command post in front of the Eiffel Tower. Street vendors immediately started selling alien-themed souvenirs. One enterprising human was selling t-shirts that read, "I got conquered and all I got was this lousy shirt." The Zarathians bought 3. Krelnak sent a priority message back to the ship. Admiral, I request permission to return to orbit. The situation on the ground is not improving. My warriors are confused. One of them just got asked out on a date. Another learned to play chess from a human in the park. This is not an occupation. This is something else entirely. Vexthor closed his eyes. In all his years of conquest, spanning dozens of worlds and hundreds of battles, nothing had prepared him for humans who simply refused to act like conquered people. They weren't fighting back with violence. They were fighting back with normalcy, and somehow that was working. President Carol Martinez sat in the Oval Office reviewing reports from around the world. The Zarathian occupation was now in its 3rd week, and by all normal standards, it should have succeeded by now. Instead, she was reading incident reports about aliens getting therapy from confused therapists, joining yoga classes, and one memorable case of a warrior becoming a regular at a karaoke bar in Seattle. Admiral Vexthor had requested a formal meeting. Carol agreed. When the alien leader materialized in the White House meeting room, flanked by 2 guards, he looked tired. Carol wondered if aliens could get tired. Apparently they could. President Martinez, Vexthor began, I must understand your species. We have conquered worlds with advanced technology, powerful militaries, and ancient civilizations. All of them fell within days. But your people treat our invasion like a minor inconvenience. Explain this. Carol gestured to a chair. The alien sat, which seemed to surprise his guards. She pulled up a screen and began showing images. Let me tell you about humanity, Admiral. This is New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. The city was destroyed. Thousands dead. Infrastructure gone. And within weeks, people were rebuilding. Not because they had to. Because they wanted to. That's what we do. She clicked to another image. This is Detroit. Economic collapse, bankruptcy. People said the city was dead. But look at this photo from last year. New businesses, new life. We rebuilt because giving up isn't in our nature. More images followed. Tokyo after earthquakes. Cities recovering from wars. Communities bouncing back from pandemics. Carol let each image sit for a moment before moving to the next. You want to know why we're not afraid of you? Because we've survived worse. We've faced extinction from our own weapons, our own mistakes, our own planet. Every generation of humans grows up with the knowledge that the world might end. And every generation decides to keep going anyway. Vexthor studied the images. But we have weapons that could destroy all of this in moments. Yes, you do. And we have weapons that could do the same to ourselves. We've had them for almost a century. We could have ended the world 100 times over. But we didn't, you know why? Because humans are stubborn. Annoyingly, persistently, impossibly stubborn. Even our own potential extinction doesn't stop us. What makes you think yours will? The Admiral had no answer. Captain Jake Morrison took over the next part of the education program. He led a group of Zarathian officers on a tour of Earth, showing them what made humanity tick. Their first stop was Detroit, Michigan. This is where cars used to be made, Jake explained as they walked through a neighborhood that mixed old industrial buildings with new tech startups. When the auto industry collapsed, people lost everything. Homes, jobs, futures. The logical thing would have been to abandon the city. But instead, people stayed. They created new industries, new communities. That building there used to make car parts. Now it's a vertical farm feeding the whole neighborhood. One of the Zarathian officers, a strategic analyst named Vorn, made notes on a datapad. This is resilience. This is Tuesday, Jake said. This is what happens when you knock humans down. We get back up. Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes we complain about it. But we get back up. They visited New Orleans next. Jake showed them the flood markers on buildings, the memorials for those lost, and then the thriving business district. Jazz music poured from clubs even in the afternoon. Street vendors sold food and art. Life had returned not in spite of the tragedy, but almost because of it. Humans have a saying, Jake told them. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's not always true. Sometimes trauma is just trauma, but the idea behind it, the hope behind it, that's very human. We believe that we can survive. And belief is powerful. In Tokyo, they observed an earthquake drill at an elementary school. Children practiced getting under desks, moving to evacuation points, and staying calm. They did it with efficiency that looked almost casual. One little girl even smiled and waved at the aliens watching from the doorway. They practice this monthly, their Japanese liaison explained. Earthquakes are a fact of life here, so children learn young how to handle them, not with fear but with preparation. It is the Japanese way. Perhaps it is the human way. The pilot program was Vorn's personal nightmare. Ryan Foster, one of Earth's test pilots, took the Zarathian officers on a flight through the debris field in low orbit. Spent satellites, old rocket stages, and fragments of broken equipment floated in a massive shell around the planet. Ryan flew his shuttle through the field like he was driving to the grocery store. He wove between large chunks of metal, spun to avoid a cloud of smaller debris, and casually ate a sandwich while doing it. His co-pilot, Linda Hayes, called out distances and vectors while scrolling through messages on her phone. This is insane, Vorn said from the passenger section. His face had turned an interesting shade of purple. This is cautious flying, Ryan replied. You should see what I do when I'm in a hurry. Last month I made this run while finishing a pizza. The trick is not to let the cheese slide off when you barrel roll. You ate food during complex maneuvers? Well, yeah, I was hungry. What, you guys fast before flying? That seems dangerous. Low blood sugar makes you slow. Linda looked back at the aliens. Ryan once did an emergency re-entry while arguing with his ex-wife on the phone. Still made the landing within 3 meters of the target zone. We're pretty good at multitasking. The Zarathians required an hour of meditation back on their ship to recover from the flight. Ryan couldn't understand what the big deal was. He flew through debris fields for fun on weekends. That evening, the Zarathian officers gathered in Admiral Vex Thor's ready room. They were supposed to be formulating a new strategy for conquering Earth. Instead, they were trying to process what they'd learned. They are not warriors in the traditional sense, Vorn reported, but they have a form of combat readiness that is always active. They treat danger as normal. They expect disaster, and prepare for it not with fear but with planning. Another officer, Krelnax, added his observations. Their children learn survival young, not because they are trained for war but because their planet is hostile. Earthquakes, storms, floods, fires. Earth itself seems to be trying to kill them. So they adapt. They rebuild from anything, a third officer said. Cities, economies, entire ways of life. I watched historical records. They have been fighting wars, plagues, and natural disasters for their entire recorded history. And they are still here, still growing, still expanding. Vex Thor listened to all of this and felt something he rarely experienced. Uncertainty. The Zarathian Empire conquered through overwhelming force and the psychological impact of that force. But humans had already faced overwhelming forces, from nature, from each other, from simple bad luck. The invasion was just another item on a very long list of things trying to kill them. We need a new approach, the Admiral finally said. What approach? Vorn asked. They are not afraid of us. They are not impressed by our technology. They invited us to dinner and tried to feed us food that burned our mouths. How do you conquer a species like this? Nobody had an answer. In her apartment in Washington, Lisa Grant video called her sister in California. They talked about normal things, work, family, the weather. Near the end of the call, her sister mentioned something. Oh, there's a Zarathian living in the apartment below me now. Seems nice, quiet, pays his rent on time. Better than the last guy. They're renting apartments now? Lisa asked. Yeah, apparently occupation doesn't include housing allowances. Who knew? He asked me for Wi-Fi password yesterday. I gave him the wrong one as a joke. He figured it out pretty quick, though. Smart guy. After they hung up, Lisa sat thinking. The invasion was failing not because Earth was winning, but because humans just kept living their lives. They absorbed the aliens into the daily routine, made them part of the landscape. Turned conquerors into neighbors who needed Wi-Fi passwords. It was the most human thing possible. Taking something strange and terrifying and making it ordinary. That was humanity's real superpower. Not strength or intelligence or technology. Just the stubborn refusal to let anything, even alien invasion, interrupt the basic flow of daily life. Admiral Vexthor reached the same conclusion that night. He looked at occupation maps that showed his warriors spread across the globe. Not conquering. Not controlling. Just existing in human spaces. Becoming part of human routines. Slowly being absorbed into the strange resilience that defined this species. He'd been a warrior for 40 cycles. He'd seen civilizations rise and fall, but he'd never seen anything like this. Humans didn't defeat their enemies. They just outlasted them. They endured, and somehow that was more powerful than any weapon. The Zarathian Empire decided to change tactics. If military occupation wasn't working, they would conquer Earth through bureaucracy. This was a proven method. On 17 other worlds, the crushing weight of administrative control had broken rebellious spirits. Forms, permits, regulations, and endless red tape could destroy hope more effectively than any weapon. Admiral Vexthor deployed his administrative corps to Earth with confidence. These were specialists trained in the art of bureaucratic domination. They could create paperwork so complex that entire governments had surrendered rather than deal with it. Surely primitive Earth would be no match. They met Nicole Sanders on their first day. She was waiting for them in a newly created office building in Washington. The sign outside read Department of Interplanetary Relations. The department hadn't existed yesterday. Nicole had created it that morning with a few phone calls and some very creative interpretation of existing regulations. Welcome, Nicole said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm Deputy Administrator Sanders. I'll be handling your administrative integration into Earth's governmental systems. Please have a seat. This may take a while. The Zarathian administrative team, led by bureaucrat Prime Zeknor, settled into uncomfortable human-sized chairs. Zeknor opened his datapad. We have prepared the standard occupation documentation. Your governments will need to sign these forms transferring authority to the Zarathian Empire. Nicole pulled out a stack of papers so thick it made an audible thud on the desk. I'm sure you have. However, before we can process any authority transfers, you'll need to fill out these preliminary forms. Form 20-B for foreign entity registration, Form 18C for military presence notification, Form 44G for environmental impact assessment of your ship's propulsion systems. Zeknor blinked. His species didn't blink often, so it was noticeable. Environmental impact assessment? Your ships use plasma drives, correct? We need to assess the impact on Earth's atmosphere. It's standard procedure. Also, I'll need proof of insurance for each vessel, current inspection certificates, and operator licenses for all pilots. We are a conquering force, not a commercial enterprise. Nicole's smile never wavered. I understand. However, under Earth's current legal framework, there's no specific category for conquering force, so we'll have to classify you as either military contractors or foreign diplomats. Both require extensive documentation. Which would you prefer? The Zarathian team exchanged glances. This wasn't in their training. Zeknor tried again. We have the authority of the Zarathian Empire. That supersedes your local regulations. I'm sure you believe that, Nicole said. However, the Zarathian Empire isn't currently recognized by any Earth government. So first you'll need to fill out the forms for foreign government recognition. That's Form 52F in triplicate. Blue copies go to State Department, white copies to the UN, pink copies you keep for your records. She slid the forms across the desk. They were in dense legal text, small font with subsections that had subsections. Zeknor picked one up and tried to read it. His translator struggled with the bureaucratic language. Words like heretofore and notwithstanding and pursuant to Clause 7 of subsection 3 made his head hurt. This is deliberately confusing, he said. Welcome to Earth, Nicole replied cheerfully. While the bureaucrats battled it out, another front opened in the war. Greg Hamilton, a lawyer from New York, filed the first lawsuit against the Zarathian Empire. It was quickly followed by 16 more. Greg specialized in class action cases and had decided that an alien invasion presented some interesting legal opportunities. The first case was straightforward property damage. A Zarathian transport ship had landed in a parking lot in Phoenix, crushing 17 cars. Greg represented the owners. The second case was for noise violations. The ship's engines had damaged hearing in 12 people in Seattle. The third was for emotional distress. The fourth for unlicensed military operations. The fifth for airspace violations. Process servers, those brave souls who delivered legal documents, began the challenging task of serving papers to aliens. A young process server named Chris Parker drew the job of serving Admiral Vexthor himself. He beamed up to the command ship, walked past confused Zarathian guards, and found the Admiral in his ready room. Admiral Vexthor? Chris asked. How did you get on my ship? Your security let me in. I told them I was here to deliver an important document. Anyway, you've been served. He handed over a thick folder of legal papers. You're being sued for damages related to the invasion. You have 30 days to respond. The court date is on page 4. Have a nice day. Chris beamed back down before the Admiral could respond. Vexthor stared at the papers in his hand. He was being sued. In over 40 years of military service, he'd been shot at, stabbed, poisoned, and nearly blown up. But he'd never been sued. The military situation remained at a stalemate. Earth's defenses proved surprisingly robust. Commander Steve Rogers led the defense fighter wing from the carrier Defiant, which orbited on the far side of the moon. The ship was old, cobbled together from 3 different countries' space programs, but it worked. Steve had been planning for alien invasion since he joined the Space Force 10 years ago. Everyone had laughed at the Space Force when it was first created. They weren't laughing now. His fighter squadrons used tactics developed from decades of science fiction, video games, and pure paranoid preparation. The thing is, Steve explained to his pilots during a briefing, humans have been making movies about alien invasion since the 1950s. We've explored every possible scenario. Flying saucers, tripods, shapeshifters, bug armies, robot invasions. We've seen it all in fiction. So when it happened for real, we already had playbooks. His second-in-command, Captain Angela Morris, pulled up tactical displays. The Zarathians use standard military formations. They're efficient, organized, and predictable. That's their weakness. We're chaotic. We try things that don't make tactical sense, and sometimes it works specifically because it shouldn't. During their last engagement, Angela had pulled a maneuver from an old space combat video game. She flew her fighter directly at a Zarathian cruiser, then cut engines and drifted past their point defense grid. The Zarathians expected her to keep moving, to dodge, to follow logical flight patterns. Instead, she became a piece of space debris until she was past their defenses. Then she hit her engines and struck at their blind spot. The Zarathians were still trying to understand how that worked. Back on Earth, the administrative war intensified. Nicole had expanded her department to include 50 staff members, all experts in various forms of bureaucratic warfare. They'd worked in the DMV, the IRS, health insurance companies, and other organizations that humans loved to hate. Now they turned their powers against the aliens. Zeknor and his team worked 12-hour days trying to fill out forms. Each form they completed spawned 3 more forms. Every question they answered raised new questions. The humans had invented a bureaucratic nightmare that fed on itself. Form 82D requires supporting documentation, Nicole explained during week 3. You'll need to provide historical records of your empire dating back 500 years. Translated into English, notarized with a cover sheet. We have conquered dozens of worlds, Zeknor said tiredly. How is this happening? Practice, Nicole said. We've been doing this to ourselves for centuries. You think your bureaucracy is tough? Try filing taxes in 3 different states while dealing with health insurance claims. That's a Tuesday for us. The Zarathian Administrative Corps finally cracked during week 4. Zeknor found himself staring at Form 127R, which required him to list every individual member of the invasion force, their roles, qualifications, and employment history. In triplicate, with references. I surrender, he said quietly. I'm sorry. Nicole looked up from her computer. Not to Earth, to the paperwork. I surrender to the paperwork. It has defeated me more thoroughly than any army could. Nicole actually felt a little bad, but only a little. Would you like some coffee? It helps. What is coffee? Liquid motivation. You're going to need it. We're only halfway through the introductory forms. Admiral Vexthor received reports from all fronts. The occupation was failing. The bureaucracy was failing. The military stalemate continued. And now they were being sued by 17 different law firms. Earth's strategy was becoming clear. They weren't trying to win through combat. They were trying to win through exhaustion, make everything complicated, make everything require effort, bury the invaders in paperwork, legal challenges, and procedural requirements, force them to follow the same absurd rules that humans dealt with every day, and never ever make it easy. It was working. His warriors were tired. His administrators were confused. And somehow, somewhere in Seattle, one of his junior officers had gotten a job at a coffee shop and seemed happy about it. The invasion was collapsing not because Earth was strong, but because humans had turned ordinary life into a weapon. Vexthor looked at the legal papers on his desk. He looked at the reports from his frustrated commanders. He looked at a photo of Earth, that small blue world that refused to be conquered. And for the first time in his long military career, he wondered if maybe they should just leave. Admiral Vexthor made a desperate decision. He invoked the ancient Zarathian tradition of single combat. It was a sacred ritual older than the Empire itself. Two champions would fight. The winner's side would claim victory. It had settled disputes for thousands of years. Surely humans would respect this tradition. President Carol Martinez received the challenge during her morning briefing. She read it twice, looked at her advisors, and said, "He wants to settle an entire planetary invasion with a fistfight?" Single combat, technically, her chief of staff corrected. But yes, essentially a fistfight. And if our champion wins, they leave Earth alone, according to their laws, yes. It's binding. Witnessed by their entire fleet and broadcast across their empire. They can't back out without losing honor. Carol thought about this. Do we have any professional fighters available? MMA people, boxers? We could, ma'am. But the rules say each side selects their champion. Any citizen can volunteer. The call went out. Earth needed a champion. Responses flooded in from military personnel, athletes, martial artists, and action movie stars. Everyone wanted to be the person who punched an alien to save the world. But the selection committee, formed hastily from military advisors and completely serious about this absurd situation, had specific criteria. They wanted someone ordinary. Someone who represented what made humans actually human. Not the strongest or the fastest, but someone who embodied the stubborn, tired, everyday resilience that had been frustrating the Zarathians for months. They chose Pete Johnson. He was a firefighter from Chicago, 36 years old with a dad bod and chronic lower back pain. He'd volunteered not because he thought he could win, but because he had the day off and figured why not. His main qualification was that he'd once gotten into a fight with a malfunctioning vending machine and won. "Mr. Johnson," Carol said when they met, "you understand what we're asking you to do?" Pete shrugged. "Fight an alien warrior for the fate of humanity? Yeah, I got it. Can't be worse than some of the fires I've handled. At least this guy won't be on fire, probably. You don't seem nervous." "Ma'am, I run into burning buildings for a living. I've pulled people out of car crashes, talked jumpers off ledges, and once got a cat out of a tree that really didn't want to be saved. I'm always nervous. I just don't let it stop me." The fight was scheduled for 3 days later. The Zarathian champion was named Korvath, a legendary warrior with over 200 victories in combat. He stood 7.5 feet tall, all muscle and bio-enhanced reflexes. He could punch through steel. His reaction time was 3 times faster than human normal. He'd trained his entire life for combat. Pete spent those 3 days working his regular shifts at the firehouse. He didn't train. He didn't practice. When asked why, he said he wasn't going to suddenly become a different person in 3 days. He was going to show up as himself and see what happened. The fight took place in a neutral location, a large empty warehouse that had been converted into an arena. Cameras from every news network in the world pointed at the center. The Zarathian fleet broadcast the feed across their empire. Billions of beings watched. It was the most viewed event in galactic history. Korvath entered first, wearing ceremonial combat armor that gleamed under the lights. He moved like water, every step precise and controlled. The crowd of humans in attendance grew quiet. This was clearly a being designed for fighting. Pete walked in wearing his Chicago Fire Department t-shirt and jeans. He looked at his watch, then at the alien, then at the assembled crowd. "We good to go? I've got dinner plans at 7. The referee, a neutral observer from another alien species, explained the rules. No weapons. Fight until one fighter surrendered or was unable to continue. Standard gravity and atmosphere. No time limit, the fight began. Korvath moved first, incredibly fast, aiming a strike at Pete's midsection. Pete, who couldn't possibly match that speed, simply wasn't where the strike landed. He'd moved before Korvath committed to the attack, reading the wind-up more than the execution. Years of watching structural collapses and predicting falling debris had taught him to see patterns. Pete didn't try to match the alien's speed or strength. He couldn't. Instead, he fought like he did everything else in life, stubbornly. He absorbed hits that should have ended the fight and stayed standing. He got knocked down and stood back up. He didn't have superior technique or enhancement or training. He just refused to quit. Korvath, for the first time in his career, felt frustration. This human should be defeated. Every strike landed. Every throw connected. But the human kept standing. Kept moving. Kept coming back. Pete caught a punch that should have broken his ribs. It probably cracked a few, actually. He winced but held onto the arm. "You know what your problem is?" he said, breathing hard. "You train for victory. Humans train for survival. There's a difference," he head-butted the alien. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't professional. It probably hurt Pete more than Korvath, but it surprised the warrior enough that Pete could land a solid punch to what he hoped was equivalent to a solar plexus. The fight lasted 47 minutes. No fancy moves. No dramatic techniques. Just two beings hitting each other until one of them couldn't continue. Pete fought like he was dealing with a stubborn fire that wouldn't go out. Methodical, persistent, refusing to be beaten. In the end, Pete didn't knock out Korvath. The alien warrior was simply too tough, but Korvath couldn't knock out Pete either. The human had been hit harder than any being should survive, had taken damage that should have ended the fight a dozen times, and he was still standing. Barely, but standing. It was Korvath who finally surrendered, not because he was more injured, but because he understood in that moment what it meant to fight a human. They didn't win through superiority. They won through sheer stubborn refusal to lose. And that was more terrifying than any weapon. Pete fell to one knee as soon as the fight was called. Medical staff rushed in. Korvath, showing respect he'd rarely given any opponent, helped Pete to his feet. "You are a worthy enemy," the alien warrior said. "Thanks. You hit like a truck. Pretty sure I'm going to be sore for a month. Hey, you want to grab a beer after this? I think we've earned it." "What is beer?" "Oh man, you're in for a treat." 2 hours later, Pete Johnson and Korvath sat in a Chicago bar drinking beer and comparing notes on fighting styles. Pete had 3 cracked ribs, a black eye, and bruises that would last weeks. He was happy about it. Korvath was trying to understand how he'd lost to someone he clearly should have beaten. "It's the human thing," Pete explained. "We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. But we're really, really good at not giving up. You can knock us down. You can hurt us. But getting us to stay down? That's the hard part." Ambassador Claire Foster represented Earth in the final negotiations with the Zarathian Empire. She'd been a diplomat for 20 years, working in the most hostile environments Earth had to offer. Alien invasion was just another Tuesday for her. The negotiations took place aboard the Zarathian command ship. Claire arrived right on time, which for her meant 15 minutes early. She sat across from Admiral Vexthor in his ready room and opened her briefcase. "Let's discuss terms," she said. The Admiral looked tired. "You want us to leave?" "No, I want you to join." "Not as conquerors. As partners." Vexthor's mandibles clicked in surprise. "What?" Claire pulled out documents. "The Galactic Empire needs what humanity offers. Resilience, adaptability, the ability to handle situations that should be impossible. And honestly, we could use what you offer too. Technology, knowledge, perspective. So here's my proposal. Earth joins the Galactic Empire not as a conquered world, but as an equal member. The Empire does not negotiate with conquered worlds." "Good thing we're not conquered then." Claire smiled. It was the same smile Nicole had used during the bureaucratic war. "Polite but dangerous. Your invasion failed, Admiral. You know it, I know it. Your whole fleet knows it. So we can either end this with more fighting, which benefits nobody, or we can end it with Earth joining as an equal partner. She slid papers across the desk. I've outlined the terms. Earth retains complete sovereignty. We participate in the galactic community by choice, not force. In exchange, we offer our unique human perspective on problem solving. I think you'll find we're quite good at surviving things that shouldn't be survivable. Vex Thor read the terms. They were fair. More than fair. They offered the Empire access to human innovation, without the cost of continued failed occupation. And they let him end this situation with honor intact. Your species is very strange, he said finally. We get that a lot. Do we have a deal? The Admiral looked at the papers, at the human sitting calmly in front of him, at the reports from his failed invasion stacked on his desk. He thought about his warriors getting parking tickets, his bureaucrats drowning in forms, his champion defeated by a firefighter with back problems. We have a deal. Claire didn't celebrate. She just nodded, pulled out a pen, and prepared to sign. Excellent. Now let's discuss the details. This probably won't be complicated, but with humans, you never know. It took 6 months to formalize everything. Earth became the newest member of the Galactic Empire, with full rights and voting privileges. The Zarathian fleet withdrew, replaced by diplomatic missions and trade delegations. Humans started spreading through the galaxy, and other species watched in fascination and horror.